Hello and welcome to Archvelder's Hacks with Archvelder and his amazing hacks. So there's been a lot of recent controversy over the use of some high-profile exploits used by the esports teams Method and Liquid. In this video, I'll be explaining how these exploits actually worked, looking at Blizzard's response and the colossal mess that resulted after an attempted fix. My name is Archvelder, and this channel is mainly about exploits in World of Warcraft. I've been running it for 10 years. It is the largest Warcraft channel specifically to do with exploits, so I thought I'd share my perspective on this. So, a number of Method players were recently banned for using a renown exploit. Discovered shortly after the expansion's launch, the bug let players reach maximum renown with the Severed Threads faction within 24 hours. Players could pledge allegiance to all 3 Severed Threads faction leaders and earn extra weekly pacts using different characters under the same Battle.net ID. So basically you could get 3 times as much reputation using this trick. This message is from WoW producer Zorbrix. We are in the process of issuing suspensions for accounts that took advantage of specific loopholes that allowed faster than intended progress on the Severed Threads renown track. This is being done to everyone who took advantage. This is not a step we take lightly, but game integrity demands that there be consequences beyond just rolling back gains, or we're just incentivizing competitive players to take immediate advantage of every exploit they find. Sincere thanks to those of you who helped bring these issues to our attention. Subsequently, use of another exploit emerged where a player from Liquid, Fired Up, was shown to be using an exploit specific to Arcane mages. To understand how the exploit works, you need to understand how the mage hero talents work. Arcane mages have 2 distinct sets of hero talents, Sun Fury and Spellslinger. Fired Up was using Spellslinger. The Spellslinger tree depends on the use of arcane splinters, which embed themselves in your target, causing damage over time. At the bottom of the Spellslinger hero talent tree is an ability called Splinter Storm. This causes all the arcane splinters to explode and a new splinter to form for each one shattered, which launches instantly. So let me show you how this works. If we look again at the first entry in the Spellslinger hero talents tree, Splintering Sorcery, it states that when you consume Nether Precision, it conjures 2 arcane splinters that fire at your target. What is Nether Precision? If you look to the right of the hero talents, it is an arcane talent which states that consuming clear casting increases the damage of your next 2 arcane blasts or arcane barrages by 20%. What is clear casting? For this we need to look in our spellbook where our baseline spells are where it states casting arcane spells has an 8% chance of making your next arcane missiles or arcane explosion free. When this happens, your arcane missiles or arcane explosion spells are highlighted. To summarize, activating Splinter Storm requires several stages. Firstly, we need to cast some arcane spells in the hope of getting a random stack of clear casting. Second, we then need to cast arcane missiles or arcane explosion to consume the clear casting. And third, by consuming the clear casting, we then embed 2 arcane splinters into our target from our hero Spellslinger talent, Splintering Sorcery. We need 8 stacks to activate Splinter Storm. Now, the exploit Fired Up was using depended on the fact that if you focused on a different target than the boss in question, the stacks were not consumed at 8. Fired Up seemed to be using focus macros for this purpose that were specially designed. I'm guessing the max was 255, as that's a binary number Blizzard often use as a max default for stacks, but don't quote me on that. Finally, to unleash all the stacks, Fired Up would focus the boss, unleashing hundreds of stacks for tens of millions of damage at once. Now, if you've seen other reports of what happened, you probably heard that the bug was fixed and the whole incident was happily forgotten. But that's not true. As is usually the case when Blizzard do actually fix anything, the fix was comically inept. Did you notice I didn't actually show myself activating Splinter Storm in my demonstration earlier in the video? The reason is that after the fix, the Arcane splinters shoot off in a random direction and hit something 40 yards away from your primary target. This doesn't just affect Arcane, it affects Frost just the same, making both specs completely dysfunctional, potentially affecting tens of thousands of players. Be aware when you ask Blizzard to fix something that they may well make the game far worse than it was to begin with, assuming they don't ignore you, which they almost certainly will. Additionally, there's the question of whether the bug was actually fixed properly anyway. After a few minutes screwing around with the ability, I managed to get it up to 16 stacks of splinters, way more than you are supposed to. I wasn't doing anything terribly clever either. This isn't a technique which will one-shot bosses. A number I've heard repeatedly is that this exploit allows you to do 4% more damage, apparently, than an equivalent Arcane mage optimizing his rotation and talents using completely legitimate means. That's not a great deal more in the general scheme of things, though it could well be significant in an exceptionally tight world first race. Subsequently, many people pointed the finger at Liquid for exploitation and the fact that members of Method were punished for the Severed Thread's renown reputation exploit, calling for similar treatment to be applied here. Now, the following statement may surprise you, but I'm not really a fan of using exploits for this type of purpose, which I'm sure sounds completely illogical given what I do on this channel, i.e. find exploits. The thing is, my goal and my passion in World of Warcraft is to find exploits. That's my main goal. When I am doing PvP or something competitive, by and large, I don't really use them, except for testing purposes. The reason is that I basically subscribe to the doctrine of ethical hacking, which is essentially do no harm. In my case, it's slightly different than that. It's closer to do no harm unless I really want to. I'm finding exploits because I like intellectual discovery. That's always been way more interesting to me than acquiring gear, achievements, status or reputation. The problem with using exploits in a world first race is that by implication, whether it is official or unofficial, you agree to abide by a set of rules in competition with other players. Maybe not formally, but implicitly. Your goal is to prove that your guild is better than the others. If you are using methods other guilds are not aware of that depend on the exploitation of game mechanics, you haven't really done that. Essentially, you aren't being true to yourself, and that's really the only judgment that matters. Now, having said all that, I do think Blizzard bear some of the responsibility for this situation. Let's go back to the Blizzard response here. I don't think I'm saying anything controversial when I say that Blizzard is not protecting the integrity of its game by taking action against people using these exploits, because it does not and never had any game integrity. Blizzard has never had a consistent policy on exploits, to an almost comical degree. Let's go back to the original Wrath of Lich King, where the first guild to clear the raid was stripped of it because they used, or possibly accidentally triggered, an exploit where the use of Saronite bombs rebuilt the platform that shatters during the fight, trivializing the latter part of the encounter. Blizzard banned the guild, then subsequently reinstated them. Not long after, in the Mists of Pandaria race to max level, a group of players won by using spellsteal mechanics on a specific set of mobs to grind experience very fast. Again, the players were banned, then subsequently reinstated. There are literally dozens of other examples of this. Additionally, the existence of these exploits is largely down to laziness and corporate greed. Blizzard were told about the exploit potential of the methods mentioned in this video by beta testers months ago. Like virtually all bug reports, they chose to ignore them. They're taking action now because there is a social media storm, which is really the only thing they respond to, apart from exploit videos on this channel and by other similar YouTubers. At the same time, there are literally dozens of major damage and other exploits that could and probably are being used by raiders in the race to world first. Some of these have literally been in the game for multiple expansions. I mean, things that go back to Wrath. There is just a failure of competence when it comes to game design. The Splinter Storm exploit is one of a long string of exploits where poor coding caused secondary targets to apply to a different target due to focusing. These effects have been wiping players in Mythic Dungeons to constant complaint for several expansions now. This isn't down, of course, to individual employees. They are overworked and underpaid, and Microsoft just sacked a whole load of them, putting additional pressure on the workforce. So it's not surprising this type of thing occurs. It is mainly the fault of an accountancy-based cost-cutting mentality supposedly designed to maximize shareholder value, though I think if you look at the statistics, you'll find that it rarely does actually maximize shareholder value. Now, I mention all this because very often defenders of Blizzard will say something along the lines of the game is very complex and it's impossible to prevent exploits appearing. Technically that's true, but with the application of some common sense measures, Blizzard would mostly eliminate the vast majority of bugs that occur within the game. First and foremost, it would be common sense to listen to the reports of the players who devote their time and energy to finding bugs for you and then write them up for you. That's not difficult. Similarly, when you introduce new player abilities that have in the past repeatedly caused problems from patch to patch, from expansion to expansion, maybe check those abilities don't have the same flaw that occurred previously. Blizzard just don't do this. Now, you may wonder why I'm giving Blizzard advice that could technically put me out of a job, and the reason is I'm 150% certain that they won't listen or do anything about any of it. I'm just talking about this because I do believe they have some culpability in what's transpired here. So if you've got this far, you probably have a real passion and interest in exploits. So you may wish to join my Patreon. It's having one of the most exciting months I could remember